What's up? My name is Glue Boy. Welcome back to the channel where we're going over more 40k. Today, finally, in a pretty just requested topic, we're doing Thousand Sons. One of my personal favorite Chaos Marines. I have like Black Legion as my top, right under is Thousand Sons. And we're also talking about one of my favorite Primarchs, Magnus. I love this man, and today I'm gonna justify it. Magnus the Red. He is, at least in the time of the Horus heresy, the second most powerful Psyker, or at least second most powerful Psyker in the Imperium, and now currently Demon Primarch in host to Tzeentch. Deal he fucking hates. But let's get into Magnus. So Magnus got his start like all other Primarchs. The Chaos Gods came down to Big E's test tubes, slashed the table, and sent them all packing to random planets. There's a slight difference though when it comes to some of the other Primarchs. Magnus actually knew about his origins from the Emperor. In fact, from birth, the Emperor was just giving him like extra Psyker juice or something. So from this little baby pod, he was actually able to communicate with the Emperor in a weird way. So he kind of had this like just connection. And he's like, oh yeah, I'm a test tube baby from this like golden clad god, as he went careening to the planet of Prospero. Prospero is a haven for Psykers, as during the Dark Age of humanity, Psykers kept popping up and causing major problems. Because being a Psyker means that you're a nice little neon sign pointing down at you in the warp, so demons can either possess you or make you explode into a little rift into the warp so they can come out and start killing things. So most places started witch hunts to kill the Psykers. Prospero was a place where a lot of Psykers ran off to. It was far enough away that it was unsafe to travel to, and they could kind of just hang out in peace. And Magnus went careening right into it, where he landed right next, luckily, to the one inhabited city of Prospero, where a bunch of psychic nerds found him, took him into their school, and raised him to be an even bigger psychic nerd. In a Primarch's case, I mean that literally. Dude got real big real fast, became a master of all fields that they could teach, and of course, obviously, Magnus then went on to go wipe out a race of psychic wasps that were inhabiting the planet with a name that I refuse to pronounce, because how the fuck do you read that? But with the wasps just killed, and obviously this dude being the biggest and best psyker in the general area, they immediately made him ruler of the planet, where Magnus turned Prospero into a fucking like paradise for psykers and knowledge. The main city became a giant hoard of just lore and hidden text. A grand library was made inside of a big old pyramid, and the planet became really prosperous. Prospero. And of course, eventually Big E would arrive. Magnus honestly made it really easy on him because all this psyker business made a big old beacon in the warp for Big E to follow. He went on down, and I have something completely shocking to let you all know. One of the most surprising things I've learned in 40k lore. When Magnus and the Emperor met, the Emperor was a good dad. The first thing they did was give a big hug and talk about psychic stuff for days. Just actually a Chaos Primarch being treated well? What setting is this? And in this meeting, the Emperor did two things. Firstly, hey Magnus, be careful with this psyker stuff. Just slow your roll, be careful. Something Magnus ignored. And also gave him the Thousand Sons Space Marine. Now, the Space Marine Thousand Sons had a bit of a issue. Now, the Thousand Sons were from the gene seed of Magnus, which was very psychically charged. So a lot of Thousand Sons were just really potent psykers, like really early on. The problem is that all that warp energy kind of messes with you. So there was a pretty bad this epidemic going on in the Thousand Sons, where they would just suddenly horribly mutate into giant gibbering mouths of like appendages and tentacles, otherwise known as Chaos Spawn. These horrific things. And actually, that's where they got their name, because by the time they reached Prospero, they only had like 1,000 men, so hence the Thousand Sons. And right from here, Magnus had a big old pickle to solve, because he was told like, hey, my boy, I'm glad you're here. You're great. We're gonna do some really cool things in the universe. Problem is, I was gonna give you this army. They're all horribly mutated and psychery. So we're considering just euthanizing your men. So you're gonna just hang out, just not get involved with the Great Crusade. Which Magnus was like, no, I'm gonna fix this problem because I'm smart. To where he decided to go do that. So Magnus decided to pull an Odin. He went into the war looking to make a deal for knowledge. To where immediately fucking Tzeentch popped up and was like, hey buddy, just give me a little sacrifice. Let me take your eye. In exchange for your eye, I'll give you knowledge of how to fix this problem. To where he did so. And of course this was a giant plot by Tzeentch to take control of Magnus, because he knows what's gonna happen to Magnus. And Magnus took the deal and immediately went to fixing his men, which honestly they became a lot more stable and were able to actually join the Great Crusade once they got their numbers a little backed up. And all things considered, Magnus was pretty effective during the Great Crusade, as he was actually one of the rare Primarchs to decide, hey, we'll start with diplomacy before we take over this planet. Mainly because he had a real secret goal when it came to the Great Crusade. He wanted to find the scraps of knowledge left by humanity. He wanted to get a bunch of psyker lore and all this hidden stuff and take it back to his library. Something that rubbed a lot of his brothers the wrong way. Mainly two people. We got Lehman, who has a giant rivalry with, and you'll see this rivalry probably in the comments because Space Wolves, T-Sons don't like each other. The fans also go at each other. And then we got Mortarion, who just hates psychers. Despises psychers on all levels, so he just fucking hates Magnus. And this would kind of prove a problem for a lot of his brothers in another way, because Magnus's want to find all this knowledge overseeded the Great Crusade. So there'd be times where some of his brothers would send in calls for aid to the Thousand Sons, where they would take years to get to the battlefield. Or he would just leave partway through because he got intel that the next planet over has some book he wants. So where he just run away to go read it for a few days. Obviously that rubs a lot of people the wrong way. And this kind of cultivated with the Council of Nicaea, which was a pretty big event where a large tribunal was held, hemmed by Big E, to discuss the future of psychers in the Space Marines. To which Magnus was one of the biggest proponents, because obviously he was. The thing he didn't know is that the Council of Nicaea was also a trial of Magnus the Red, as his actions were being called into question. And I love this man, but man was real dumb in the Council of Nicaea, I'm not gonna lie. He went in there not knowing what the whole situation was and was real fucking arrogant the whole time. Very much like, I know more than you, I'm smarter, check out my cool spells. Very flippantly using his sorcery, like just out and about during his debates. Like tried to pull some like Redditor actually shit. Didn't go the greatest because he pissed off the Emperor so much, he disbanded the use of psychic abilities in combat. Got rid of the organizations that controlled the psychers inside the Space Marines, and said, you're not psychers anymore, you're back to Space Marines, go back to your normal units. Magnus was fucking upset about this, obviously, but he took rest in knowing that unless the Emperor was just gonna stand over his shoulder 24/7, no one would really know if he was casting his spells. So they went on to what they're doing only in secret. And now we get to the good old Horus heresy. And we get right back to the events of the dude who's actually responsible for everything, Erebus. Because Erebus, if you don't remember, conspired to get Horus to turn traitor. Mainly, he got a weapon known as the anatheme and got Horus stabbed by it. And the only way to cure him was to bring him to this temple and do this ritual that required some human sacrifice. And in reality, was putting him in a vision quest to see the current 40k universe in its awful, like dystopian glory, and say, this is what your dad's doing. This is what he wants. He's gonna erase all of you from history except his favorite boys and be horribly evil in a god. Horus saw this, was like, nah, it's not cool. It's kind of fucked up. And Magnus actually showed up. He projected himself into Horus's vision and was like, brother, stop listening to that guy. He's lying to you, he's bad, he's evil. Where Horus had already made up his mind, rejected his brother's help, and decided, I'm going to fight the Emperor. I'm gonna kick his ass. Where immediately, Magnus is like, oh shit, everything's going bad. Horus is betraying the Emperor. I gotta tell Dad. And in another move, Magnus decided, I know how to prove my dad both wrong in the Council of Nicaea and help the Imperium. I'm going to psychically project myself to Terra and tell him in person rather than flying over there. It's too slow. To where he projects himself to Terra and he finds a giant barrier in the way, a big psychic barrier. He's like, this won't do, I gotta tell Dad. To where a certain squid-shaped bird enthusiast kind of wiggled his way down and just started whispering, hey buddy, you know, that wall, I could give you a little boost and help you get through it. You wanna take me up on this deal? And then Magnus is like, yes, I have to, I gotta get to Dad. He gets the psychic power up from a definitely not Tzeentch and breaks through the wall to where a bunch of demons start rolling into Terra and into the throne room. Because that barrier was specifically designed to keep demons out. And Magnus just fucking broke it. Obviously, the Emperor was fucking pissed. Real upset at Magnus. And now the Emperor had to go sit on his new construction, the Golden Throne, a psychic amplifier to manually keep up the barrier. He couldn't just rebuild it. He had to manually hold it shut. And he ordered his son, Lehman, the executioner of the Emperor, to go to Prospero and bring Magnus back here in chains. To where Lehman was like, all right, Dad, I'll do it. I don't like Magnus anyways. Started flying over. Horus intercepted and said, hey, new orders from Dad. He wants you to kill Magnus. And Lehman was like, weird shit, but okay. I trust you, Horus. You wouldn't betray me. And yeah, Horus was essentially just looking to either kill Magnus or get him so against the Emperor that he would join his side. And they went to Prospero, which Magnus was real depressed because he fucked up bad. He actually messed up. And so he decided, all right, I'm gonna sit this out. I'm gonna let the Space Wolves kill me. Because that's obviously what they're here for. I'm just gonna let them come and get me. Lehman's gonna come and kill me. So he didn't tell anyone that the Space Wolves were coming. And when they got there, he also refused to communicate with Lehman. Lehman kept trying to hail him personally, and Magnus just didn't respond. And so he decided, all right, Dad told me to kill him. And so he started glassing the planet. And at that point, Magnus was like, this is disproportionate. Okay, you're not just gonna do a surgical strike, come get me. All right, we're doing this then, and decides to go fight. To where we get a pretty sick battle. Custodians are there, Constantine Valdor, Sisters of Silence are going there, using their blank powers on the Psychers, and Magnus and Lehman fight in a pretty cool duel. Magnus punches out one of Lehman's hearts. Lehman does a backbreaker on Magnus, which we have art of, sick. So Magnus is there, Legion dying, himself also kind of dying, and Tzeentch comes back into his ear once more and is like, hey, I can help you, I can save you. And so he's like, all right, fuck it, Tzeentch, do it. Just get me out of here, we're done. And Tzeentch, in his credit, did it immediately. He teleported all the Thousand Sons and Magnus right into the warp to a place known as the Planet of Sorcerers, where Magnus also, a little fun thing happened when he was fighting Lehman. His soul shattered and spread out. Mainly the one that's now serving Tzeentch is the remnant of his shard of Magnus's power. And one shard was left in Prospero. The shard of his compassion and care for the Imperium, which a certain Jagatai Khan would talk to. Which we'll get there when we talk about Jagatai, because the entire scene there is in the destroyed ruins of Prospero rules. But it's a Jagatai story. And once Magnus got tossed into the warp with all his boys, he was then ascended to becoming a demon Primarch. And that's where he started on his actual traitorous actions during the heresy. Yeah, honestly, there's a lot more I could go into Magnus. There's a lot more stuff. Magnus's like future stuff, because he was actually pretty active in current 40k, where he would go out and beat up Gilliman and keep trying to kill the Space Wolves and keep failing at that. But that's not something we're going to get into right now. this is just what you need to know about Magnus the Red. And yeah, that's Magnus. I love this Primarch. I think there's some problems, and there's some problems people have. There's mainly two things at play here. First of all, Magnus makes some dumb decisions, but they're not out of character decisions. Every single bad decision he makes, he has a reason that he believes is valid. Like, he refused to talk to Lehman only because he refused to be another puppet. Tzeentch had told him, hey, you're destined to serve me, buddy, and decided, all right, I'm just gonna let Lehman kill me. Just do that. But once Lehman started actually killing Prospero itself, he had to step in. He wasn't gonna let his city die. And other stuff, like he believed truly that he was a good enough psyker to do a lot of things and just wasn't correct. He's also just arrogant to a fault. Other than that, Magnus has some real writing in reverse problems. He was in current 40k. When they went back to write 30k stuff, they had to make him do decisions to cause the fall of Prospero. So that's just a hurdle in writing in general. Some bad events are gonna happen if you write backwards. Yo, Editor Glue Boy here. I feel like I missed a point, so I'm gonna go back and do that now. I think one of the more interesting parts of Magnus's character, to me, is that he fucks up, and he fucks up constantly. Because I like me smart characters. I like intelligently written characters that are written intelligently. You see that with Fabius Bile, Trazen, many others in 40k. And I think what makes Magnus interesting is despite that intelligence, he does mess up a lot. But those mistakes make sense for his character. Because a lot of those actions people give him shit over, and rightly so, he fucked up a good few times, he had a good reason in his own head, and as well, like, I feel like a lot of people are expecting Magnus to act logically all the time, which, like, that's not what people do, because you can be a logical person and still be victim to emotional outbursts or just emotional decision-making, because you're a human who has emotions. You're not a Necron. You can't just, I don't know, go around be logical 100% of the time. That's not how your brain works. And I do think there are valid things to critique about Magnus. It makes sense. I said as much, he has some writing and reverse problems, but a lot of Primarchs in 40k have that. I'm not going to go too much into it, because I think if I do, it's just going to turn into Bricky's let good characters do bad things video, which, fantastic video, by the way. But that's more of Magnus's problem. I think you can critique him. But I think critiquing a character for making a decision you don't think would be the best idea isn't the best. I don't really like that form of critique. I think, if anything, you should be analyzing what a character would do, what's in their character, and etc. Yeah, that's Magnus. Stay tuned next week where we're going to cover the Thousand Suns. So, like, subscribe, comment, keep your eyes peeled in a few days for the Thousand Sun video. And yeah, that's it. See ya.